All right, let's jump right in. If you spend any time at all in the personal finance corners of the internet, you've definitely seen it. That ultimate clickbaity promise, the idea that you can retire and be totally financially free in just 5 years. Sounds like a total dream, right? But in this explainer, we're gonna cut through all that motivational fluff. We're tossing out those fantasy stock returns and looking at the raw, undeniable math behind this claim. We're gonna break down who actually pulls this off, the real-world cost of doing it, and the massive missing puzzle piece that the standard narrative always seems to conveniently leave out. To ground all this in reality, let me introduce you to a guy named Sam. Picture this. It's a random Tuesday afternoon at 2 p.m., and Sam is at Trader Joe's casually picking up pasta, frozen blueberries, and bell peppers. When someone asks him how he's grocery shopping in the middle of a typical workday, he just laughs and drops this line. I haven't had a job in 2 years. I retired when I was 38. Now here's the kicker. Sam doesn't have a trust fund. He didn't sell off some massive tech startup, and he didn't just get super lucky on Bitcoin. He's a regular software engineer living in Ohio, making a completely normal salary. Yet somehow, he built up enough wealth to literally never need a paycheck again after just 5 years of laser-focused effort. Before we unpack Sam's exact playbook, let's get perfectly clear on what our finish line actually is. The phrase financial freedom gets tossed around so much, it's kind of lost its punch, hasn't it? But true financial independence? That just means having enough money invested that your returns cover your living expenses forever. We usually use the 4% rule here. The quick and dirty math is just taking your annual living expenses and multiplying them by 25. So, say you want to live on 40 grand a year, you need exactly $1 million invested. Once you hit that magic number, your portfolio basically pays for your life. And working, well, that becomes entirely optional. All right, brace yourselves, because here is a mathematically beautiful, but honestly behaviorally devastating reality of that 5-year promise. To hit financial freedom in exactly 5 years, starting from absolutely zero, you have to save about 83% of your income. Let me repeat that. Not 8.3%, 83%. To put that in perspective, the typical US household saves maybe 4% right now. So jumping to 83%, that's roughly a 20-fold shock to your financial system that you have to maintain for 60 consecutive months. Is it mathematically possible? Sure, but for pretty much everyone watching this, it's virtually impossible. And that brings us to the master variable. This is hands down the single most important concept in early retirement math, and honestly, nobody talks about it because it's just not that sexy. Your timeline to freedom is dictated by your savings rate, not your income. Income is not the boss here. When you crank up the percentage of your income that you save, that money is actually doing double duty. First off, your investment portfolio is growing way faster because you're shoving more cash into it. But second, and this is the absolute magic part, your actual retirement target shrinks. Think about it. If you learn to live happily on less, you literally need a smaller pile of money to fund your life. Just look at the sheer leverage of this master variable. Traditional, run-of-the-mill financial advice always says, hey, save 10 to 15% of your income. Well, if you stick to that 10%, the math shows it'll take you 51 years to reach financial independence. Basically, standard advice is a guaranteed ticket to working until you're old. But watch what happens when we pull that lever. Bump that savings rate to 50%, and your timeline instantly plummets to 17 years. Going from 10% to 50% isn't just shaving off a few years, it's buying back 34 years of your life on this planet. And if you somehow hit that 80% mark, boom, freedom in about 5.5 years. Which brings us to part 1, the Trojan horse case study, Sam's 5-year sprint. So knowing just how extreme that math gets, how did our buddy Sam actually pull this off? Well, it all kicked off on a Sunday afternoon back in late 2017. He was deep down a rabbit hole on a financial forum, ran his own numbers, and realized a hardcore 5-year push could actually buy his freedom. He literally scribbled the math on the back of a paper diner menu, snapped a photo of it, and kept it on his phone. Whenever he felt his willpower slipping over those next 60 months, he'd just pull up that picture. Now let's look at the absolute stark reality of his setup. He was pulling in about $145,000 a year in Columbus, Ohio, and yeah, that Ohio part is a huge detail. Geographic arbitrage was definitely his friend here. He hit a massive 70 to 75% savings rate, meaning he was aggressively investing 90 to 100 grand every single year. To pull that off, he had to shrink his entire existence down to just $35,000 a year in expenses. That is a razor-thin, super strict monthly budget of exactly $2,900 to cover rent, groceries, his trusty 2014 Toyota, and literally everything else. But throwing around an abstract number like a 75% savings rate really doesn't capture the brutal day-to-day reality of this lifestyle. The true cost of Sam's freedom was wild. 0 international vacations. I mean, his big getaway was literally sleeping in his car at a national park. He used the same shattered iPhone until it gave up the ghost. His entire wardrobe, a tight rotation of 4 pairs of pants and 7 shirts for years. He didn't even have a couch for the first 2 years, just a sad folding chair left over from college. And meals were pretty much endless bowls of rice, beans, and chicken thighs. Beyond all that, he faced some serious social isolation. Dating on that kind of micro-budget was practically impossible. And as his peers naturally upgraded their lifestyles, he aggressively refused to, which definitely made some friendships drift away. Okay, pay close attention because here is the absolute turning point of this whole story. Look at this number, $300,000. Now, Sam was saving 70 to 75% of his income, right? But earlier, we established that you need an 83% rate to hit freedom in 5 years if you're starting from 0. So, what gives? How did he do it? Well, here is the massive, giant caveat that financial influencers love to conveniently ignore. Sam didn't start from 0, not even close. When he kicked off his epic 5-year sprint at age 33, he already had $300,000 sitting in investments. He had actually spent his entire 20s grinding, saving hard on a much lower salary to build up that foundation. And all that money was just quietly compounding, doing the heavy lifting in the background the entire time. And that brings us to the core truth of this whole explainer. The shiny influencer myth tries to sell you on 5 years to financial freedom. But the gritty mathematical reality, it's more like 15 years of prep work, followed by 5 years of absolute suffering. Let's be real, without a substantial starting balance like Sam's $300K doing its quiet magic, a 5-year timeline is basically a pipe dream for a normal earner. Sam didn't just save for 5 years, he saved for 15 long years. And social media is only showing you the highlight reel of the final 5. So where does that leave a typical household that doesn't just have a $300,000 head start sitting around? Let's map out the sobering truth, using the US median household income, which is roughly $84,000. If that household pushes themselves incredibly hard to hit a 30% savings rate, living on about $3,600 a month, they are still looking at 25 to 28 years to reach financial independence. Even if they stretch to a super uncomfortable 40%, really compressing their lifestyle, they're still staring down 22 years of grinding it out. It's boring, but it's true. The difference between a 5-year timeline and a 20-year timeline isn't some secret clever investing trick. It's simply a massive gap in income and starting capital. Which leads us to part 2, the Coast-Fi alternative. So if sprinting to retirement in 5 years takes impossible sacrifices or just a massive head start, what should the rest of us actually be aiming for? Say hello to Coast-Fi. Seriously, this is the hidden gem of personal finance. The algorithms completely ignore it because, frankly, it doesn't make for a flashy YouTube thumbnail, but it is a total game changer. Coast-Fi simply means you invest enough money early on in your career that the compound growth alone will carry your portfolio to a full retirement target by age 65. No additional contributions required. 0. Sure, you still have to work to pay your daily bills right now, but you literally never have to save another dollar for retirement again. The relentless pressure of squeezing savings out of every future paycheck? Poof, gone. The math just quietly secures your future in the background. And what's honestly shocking about Coast-Fi is just how small these milestone numbers are if you start early enough. Let's assume a totally reasonable 7% return after inflation. If you just have $94,000 invested by the time you're 30, you will literally coast to $1 million by age 65 without ever saving another dime. Mind-blowing, right? What if you want $1.5 million at 65? You just need $140,000 invested at 30. Want to go big with $2 million? You need $187,000 at age 30. These aren't lifelong grinds you're signing up for. They are snapshots. Once you cross these specific targets, you can take your foot entirely off the gas pedal. Now let's look at Sam's story again through this new lens. Remember, Sam started his sprint at 33 with $300,000. By age 35, just 2 years into his intense lifestyle, his portfolio crossed $400,000. At that exact moment, he absolutely obliterated his Coast-Fi number. Mathematically speaking, he had already won the whole game. Every single thing he did after age 35, sitting on that folding chair, eating the endless rice and beans, squinting at a cracked iPhone, was technically completely optional. Those last 3 years of intense deprivation didn't actually buy him retirement security. He already had that in the bag. They only bought him early access. Picture these two totally different paths. First, you have the sprinter. They aggressively save $30,000 a year for just 5 years, from age 22 to 27, and then they stop saving completely. Then you have the moderate saver.
This person saves a very normal $9,000 every single year, all the way from age 22 to 65. Fast forward to age 65, and guess what? Both of them end up with right around $2.2 million. Same exact destination, but the crucial difference is that from age 27 onward, the sprinter gained decades of ultimate optionality. They could switch to a totally stressful career, take massive sabbaticals, or just spend every single dollar of their paycheck on fun stuff because their future was already locked in.
Which brings us to the single most actionable piece of math in this entire explainer. Listen, you do not need an 83% savings rate, and you definitely don't need to sleep in your car. You just need to pull what we call the lever. By pushing your savings rate just 5 percentage points higher, you can literally buy back 2 to 3 entire years of your life on the back end. Seriously, just nudging your savings from 30 up to 35% deletes about 3 full years from your timeline to freedom. The leverage you get from small changes is absolutely enormous, and the best part is, this lever is almost entirely in your control. So, as we wrap up this explainer today, I'm gonna leave you with a direct challenge. It is time to stop chasing that 5-year fantasy that practically requires a 15-year head start anyway. Instead, look at your own actual math. What exactly is your savings rate right now? And more importantly, what specific, realistic steps would it take for you to bump it up just 5% higher? Because that one little shift, that is the real mathematical step toward your own Coast 5 freedom. Figure out your rate, find that 5%, and take back years of your life.